All right, welcome back, everyone. This is episode 1 of the Mental Health and Wellbeing podcast with me, Pastor Richard, and
Kim Keys, not a pastor. Hi.
no, Kim, you're not a pastor, but do for the audience who haven't listened, do
Yeah,
tell them why you're
who
here
am I?
and why
Who
you're
am I? What am I
qualified
doing
to
here?
be here.
Yes, Kim Keys. I actually live in Boise, Idaho. I'm a mental health provider, have been for, well, I don't even know how many years at this point, quite a few. Been around a minute. I run a group counseling practice. There's about 18 of us, including myself, in Boise, and spent a lot of time down in the Jacksonville area and with your church. And I love that community and I love the project that you're working on too. So I'm happy to help any way that I can.
Wonderful. So again, if you haven't listened to episode or watched episode 0, that's our little introductory one. You can go there and see kind of the background, but really quickly, we're just here to answer a lot of questions that came up from an evening where we looked at a book called Spurgeon's Sorrows. There is a copy of it actually behind me in episode 0. I forgot that it was behind me. Here it is for those of
Nice.
you who would like to look this book up. Highly recommend it. Again, we'll put a link down in the description below, and maybe to some other resources. We'll wait and see. But this is episode 1, and today we're going to be covering engagement skills and boundaries.
We're going to try anyway.
We're going to try, absolutely. And I wanted to
Boundaries.
do this because these were things that came up directly out of those questions that were asked and submitted after that evening that we spent together. So, without further ado, I'm going to be asking some questions. Kim's going to be answering some questions. You're going to be listening. And then again,
Do the best I can.
we'll provide an email address if you've got additional ones. But so when we think of engagement skills, we're really thinking of how we can engage with people that we know who maybe have a mental health condition or carers for people with mental health conditions, that kind of stuff. So, what's a good way to begin that conversation to ask those opening questions?
Right. It's such a great question. And I think it can be really intimidating for a lot of people. In our field, we call it rapport building.
Mm,
And the good news is, especially for those of you who are, like rules, and I like rules. I like rules and guidelines and things like that. And so to have some sort of steps is always really helpful. So I'll give you that. Hopefully give you that. But in a lot of ways, it's just being an authentic person,
mm,
right? And so usually what I tell people is just ask, even if it seems taboo or something that we're not supposed to talk about. For years, for instance, suicide, for years and years, there's been a myth that if we ask directly about suicide, like have you been thinking about killing yourself or killing somebody else, that it might put an idea in somebody's head
yeah.
or that might spur on an idea that's
Yeah,
been
we
in
don't
there.
want to instigate anything. We don't want people to start thinking something they weren't already thinking.
Exactly. Or it's too private and you don't talk about those things. That's just, it's a myth. It's not true at all. In fact, typically it's the opposite that's true. When we ask about those really difficult things that people experience a lot of shame and guilt around, it normalizes it, it
Hmm.
takes the shame out of it, and therefore it's a lot less powerful typically than it normally is. So we have to just find a way to ask. And it can be as simple as how are you doing lately? I've been noticing XYZ. You're a little bit more withdrawn than you normally are. I can see it in your eyes, those kinds of things. There's a couple of things that you're doing there. One of the things you're doing is just straight out asking. And obviously, the environment is important, right? You're not going to want to sit there and, we're not going to go to Thanksgiving dinner with all the family and friends and everybody.
What are we thankful for? Well, I'm thankful that Ethel's here today. And by the way,
Why? Tell me about your traumas. Like, no, we're not going to do that. It's world's worst Thanksgiving dinners. I keep waiting for a movie to be made of it. I'm sure it probably has been already, but so, by yourself or quiet or someplace where the person doesn't feel particularly put on the spot, right?
right.
But just asking, how have you been? Tell me about what's been going on in your life. The interesting thing is in the US, and you probably have a comment about this, I don't know, but years ago I had this German friend and he looked at me one day and he said, "Why do you people say, hi, how are you? Because you don't care." Like, oh, well, that's a really good point. Like we would go to the grocery store and, hi, how are you? And Did you find everything you're looking for? Like, there's not even time to answer that question. So it's lost a lot of its power. So we usually try not to use that. How are you? How are you? Even if you add feeling at the end of it, it works a little better. How have you been feeling? Um, but just asking the question, what have you been doing lately? What's been going on for you? But in particular, something that you've noticed. I've noticed you seem a little bit more down lately. I've noticed you seem a little bit more withdrawn. The second thing that you're doing is you're telling them I see you. And that's one of the most powerful things we can tell another human being is that I see and recognize you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then being prepared, when, like you say, some people use it as a greeting. In Wales, it's a
Yep.
big thing to say, "You all right? How you doing? You all right?" And I remember when my sister-in-law came over to visit the UK for the first time, well, to visit myself and my wife Alex. She was like, "Why are everyone asking if I'm all right?"
Yeah. I'm all right.
It's just greeting. But I always maintain if you ask if someone's all right, and if they just say fine, okay, maybe that is just their answer for the day. But also, if they begin to tell you, be prepared to listen.
Be prepared. Yeah, exactly. And the really hard part is that the sort of the expectation, at least in Western cultures, the expectation is I'm all right, is I'm fine, is I'm good. Yeah, in fact, there's an old joke I grew up with. Maybe it's just my family, I don't know, but I grew up with like great grandmother or whoever would like don't ask them how they are because they'll tell you 8 billion complaints about whatever physical ailment.
Knee hurts, my back hurts.
Exactly. The older I get, the more I understand that actually.
The warranty runs out at 50, so I'm told.
Exactly. But you're right. It's the being prepared part. And I think that I don't maybe that's the kicker is helping folks really be prepared for how to respond to that. I think the biggest trap that I see supporters get into is that they think that support or help is somehow finding a solution for the person or giving them advice. And the thing that I would ask everybody to think about is when you're really struggling, what does support look like to you?
Right.
And it's almost never, I have never once heard, I want somebody to tell me how to fix my problem. I've never heard that at all. I've heard other things. I've heard, I really want them to listen. I've heard, I really want them to just understand where it is that I'm coming from. And that is the single most, in fact, we know this. You mentioned, Richard, that you were going to have somebody come in and talk about ACEs, right?
Yes.
Adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
Good. I'm so glad.
So by the time you've seen this, that should be planned and coming up.
Right. Well, one of the things that came out of that study is that even in traumas that happen in childhood, and when we talk about protective factors, the single most protective factor is having one trusted person, adult, that person could connect to.
Right.
That's all you're after. When you are preparing yourself for whatever response comes to you, you need to prepare yourself for empathy, validation, expressing understanding in some way, right? And so the steps to that, it can sound like, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. It's understandable that you would feel really frustrated or betrayed or whatever. Try to look at them, look at their body language, listen to what it is that they're saying, not necessarily the content of what they're saying, but what's underneath it, the feeling. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important that, talking to people over the phone is great, but being with somebody in person when you can actually see them, like you say, read some body language, it's not just what you're hearing, it's what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. And hugely what I heard you say is, just people want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be understood, at least on some level, right? Not so much fixed, but just, this is where I'm
Mhm.
at. Which, as you mentioned, childhood, it leads into this next question that somebody came up with was, as a parent, how can I support my teenager to improve their mental health?
Amen.
We can start young, right?
Start young. I know teens are hard. You start young. I mean, the fastest, the easiest way, not easiest, but most effective way to do it is to give them a language for what it is that they're experiencing. They're experiencing big feelings. The largeness of the feelings, a lot of adults think that well, it's the same feelings I have. I'm like, actually, it's not. It's a lot bigger because the part of your brain that regulates feelings, really the part of your brain that says, hey, you're at a 6, not a 20, it's not developed yet. So they think they're at a 20.
Yeah.
And their feelings are raging as if they're at a 20 when you and I would feel them at like a 6 because our brain is regulating it and theirs is not regulating it. So giving them a language for how to express that and being that container for them, I think is the most valuable thing. I think too, as parents, and that need to fix things,
Mm.
I think is really powerful amongst humans. I love where it comes from. It's such a beautiful place. I've never seen anybody really try to provide solutions or advice and things like that that wasn't really well intended in doing it. But really, the message that we're sending, and this is going to be painful for myself included. I remember the moment that I realized that I was doing this, and it was devastating to me because I didn't intend it. But the message that sending when I'm giving somebody advice or telling them what to do is I don't believe or trust in your capacity and capability to manage your life,
Mm.
which is not ever, I don't think, anything that anybody would send that message, not intentionally, but it's in fact what we're doing. So we have to, especially with our teens, we have to avoid that and respect as many boundaries as we possibly can. Part of that rapport building, I think, is setting the stage that you're going to go at their speed. Hey, I'm here to talk if you're open to talking.
Right. Right.
Whatever it is that you want to share with me, you can. And then I'm a parent of a teenager, so like the blood that is coming out of my mouth when I'm biting my tongue, trying not to push harder when he's not ready to talk yet.
Right. Right.
And what's interesting, I think, is how many times when you open-end it like that, and open-ended questions are probably the most powerful tool that any parent can ever learn, right? How was your day? Not an open-ended question because it can be answered by one word.
Fine.
Fine. It was
Yeah.
good. All good.
Yeah.
Tell me about your day. What did you do today? What did you learn today? What were
What,
you frustrated with today?
what was your best experience today, or your worst experience today, or
Exactly.
whatever it might be,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
joy today, being a bit more specific. And yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
my sister-in-law, when the boys were super little, she had this, it was their prayers at night, and it was their thanks and sorries, which I just loved. And
Mhm.
it gave them an opportunity to kind of think through their day and think through what they were thankful for, but also just the icky parts of the day in this really sort of open-ended way.
Yeah.
And I think those are really powerful. But what's interesting to me is the number of times that I have said, let me know if you're wanting to talk about something or those kinds of things, and then you leave it,
Yeah,
how many times they jump on that opportunity.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. So taking a step from that, then, because there are times when obviously we realize, whether it be in a parent-child situation or a friend situation, or even
Yep.
believe it or not, child to a parent, right?
Yep.
You're there for them, you're helping, doing all those great things that we've just said in exactly that way, but you realize this person needs help beyond what I can provide. How do we open that door to the possibility of support, professional help, whatever that might
Hmm.
look like?
So that's a little bit tricky because on one hand, what I'm going to say is you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
about
on the other hand, I'm going to say, yeah, it's sort of, I have this saying that I use with clients all the time. I'm going to tell you something and then I'm going to take it back a minute later, tell you how many ways it's wrong. What I'm going to say is you don't, because in a lot of ways it's really overstepping and it's a scope issue, scope of practice issue, right? So I think of even for us, if I think of somebody that I know that might benefit from medications, those kinds of things, I still, as a counselor, I still can't say, I think you need to go on Wellbutrin or Zoloft or whatever it is, right? But what I can say is you might want to consider visiting with your doctor, da 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 da, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of scope of practice kind of an issue. So we avoid it in terms of like what we don't say is you seem depressed. I think you need to go see a counselor, right?
Yeah.
Because in that phrase, what you're doing is stepping beyond what your training is. You seem depressed, that kind of thing, into what a counselor or social worker or psychologist would do, right? But what we can say is, you know, as we've been talking more and more, I am feeling a little out of my depth. I'm not quite sure how to help you. I
Mhm.
really think maybe even visiting with somebody, they might tell you everything is fine and you're good to go and all is good. But I'm just concerned that I'm not able to give you or offer you the help that you need right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just kind of a fine line of helping somebody understand that they might need more than what you can give
sure.
without saying what that thing is, because it might be counseling, it might be meds, it might be neither of those things.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah,
One, other, both, all of the above, or none of the above, right? Because everybody's individual.
exactly.
Everyone's
Hmm.
different. Everyone's made up different. There's no, I wish there was a stock answer, right? You experience
Yeah.
A, you do B. That'd be
Yep.
nice.
I know. It's sort of like what we were talking about at the beginning. I would love to just have a push and play job, like where I was, some days I wish I could have a job I could be bored at, but we're working with humans, so there is no push and play.
No, no.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
put myself in that category too. So
Yeah. But I found that really the most helpful is just kind of admitting to my own limits, right? Being able to say, I'm not sure that I'm able to help you as much as you need right now.
definitely, definitely.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important that we say this, and we've said it, in meetings that we've had, and in as we've talked about mental health and well-being in the church setting. You know, we are not saying there is a cookie cutter answer to any of this. Really, we do see all of these helps, all of these supports are valid and have their role, because there are those that say you must be just like this or just like that, or no, you don't do medication, or you don't do
Right.
therapy, or you just pray, or you don't and so we really want people who listen into this to realize it's a combination of all of those things, or none of those things, depending on the
Exactly. Yeah.
because
I
the
tell
stigma
clients all the time,
around these things.
mhm. I tell clients all the time, we're looking for your particular toolbox. Like we
Yeah.
have 1,000 tools, but
Yes,
what tools work for you is going to be very different than what tools work for me. So we're just going to work on all of the tools and we'll see which ones land with you.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm a Phillips head screwdriver, and sometimes I'm a pair of pliers, and
Exactly. Yep.
yeah. So talking to those sort of things, another thing that came up for people was some of the terminology
Uh-huh.
that people use, and people were unclear. This question was kind of like somebody was saying they're unclear how to support somebody who's experiencing depression versus somebody who's suffering from, something like bipolar or schizophrenia, something that
Right.
has more of a term to it, or more of a definition, which we
Right.
do or do not understand sometimes.
Yeah. And that one, I think it's next episode, Richard, that we're going to talk a
Okay.
little bit more in depth into sort of like when it's more than just difficult feelings, like when it's a mental health condition sort of a thing. And we can get a little bit more into breaking those apart. But for the conversation today, and one of the reasons that I really highlighted that question is because I can't stress enough that it doesn't matter what's in front of you, the answer's the same. The answer is still, because the question is, how do I support someone blank a teen, somebody with bipolar, somebody with depression, somebody with schizophrenia? The answer is ask, straightforward, get really curious. Tell me more about that. What's that like for you? So when you're experiencing this, what's happening for you? The more curious that you can be, and then validating that experience. Man, that seems really frustrating. That must be really confusing. That must be really hard. That's where the empathy and the validation comes into play. And that is the same across the board. And respecting those boundaries, whatever it is that you want to talk to me about today, we can we can lean into whatever it is that if there's something part of this that you don't want to share with me yet or ever, you're in the driver's seat. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if the three things are in place, if you're asking the hard questions, asking the things that nobody else asks, and then respecting any kind of those boundaries, I'm going to ask you about this, and I need you to know that you can tell me anything you want to tell me, and you can not tell me anything you're not ready to tell me, right? And we're validating and expressing empathy. That's how you support
Totally.
anybody. Yeah.
Unconditional loving people where they're
Yep.
at, not where you'd expect them to be, want them to be, like them to be, or they think it should be
Exactly.
either, right? You know?
Exactly. One of the experiments I ran in my life, it took about, I don't know, I did it for like 6 months, and I would encourage everybody to do it, but to get the word should entirely out of your vocabulary. Find a different word for it. And I
Mm,
think what I landed on is could or might, something you might consider. So, going back to one of the earlier questions, sort of how do you express that somebody might need more help than what you're able to provide? One of the things that you can say is, like I said, like I'm concerned that what you need, the support you need is more than what I'm capable of doing right now. Something you might consider is
yeah.
going and seeing a counselor. Just visit with them for a little bit. They might see something that I'm not seeing or something like that.
Yeah.
But if we can get the word should out of our vocabulary, we're less likely to get into that advice stuff.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because, we want to, we want to help, not harm, right? That's
Right.
that's one of the things. I mean, that was something else that came up as well. People are concerned about, well, what about, you know, to help a person who is a friend that out of ignorance. I'm just trying to work out what this question is asking. So
Yeah,
bear with me, folks.
no problem. We've got you.
Because
Well, why?
I want to honestly ask the questions that came up, right? So,
Exactly.
uh,
Yep.
so I'm just going to read it for now. What can you say to help a person who is a friend that out of ignorance they may do more harm than good to someone they encounter with a mental health problem? There you go.
I
Read
love
written.
it. Encapsulate that, Kim.
Yeah,
I know exactly
trying to
what
be
you
clever.
we want to do, and you mentioned it a minute ago, we want to do good and not harm. And that can be really tricky. I think, Richard, that your program that you guys run has some sort of staffing, right? Involved?
So
Like,
what we're looking to do after these podcasts come out in the fall, what we're doing currently is looking at curriculum that will be
yeah,
facilitated that helps people to be able to talk and be listened to and in a group setting, kind of what we're talking about
yes.
today, but allowing people to talk to one another more than anything else. It's that kind of peer support. Now we already have Stephen ministers that do one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're aiming towards next is kind of more that peer support in a group where people feel
Right.
validated and that kind of thing. And the curriculum really does ask a lot of those questions that we've been talking about and that kind of thing. And to have some people trained in how to facilitate that, basically how to be there but remove themselves, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does. Yeah, it does. So the reason I ask is we're in this position a lot with each other as colleagues and with your Stevens ministers as colleagues. Hopefully they get together and kind of talk about some
Absolutely.
cases and things like that. And with
Without ever revealing any identifying features.
exactly. Yes. Really,
Confidentially,
it's how do I do my
they
job
do.
better?
They support each other. Yes,
That's
yes,
a really good thing to clarify.
yes. Confidentiality.
Confidential, exactly. And at the same time, when we do get together and we talk about things without identifying who they're coming from, the
Totally.
reason, the entire purpose that we do that is exactly this purpose, is to make sure that whatever we're doing is in fact working towards the benefit of a person and not potentially harming them. And I think each other are really, really powerful. Other helpers helping other helpers is really powerful in that. And I would go back to what we would talk about when we talk about rapport building, and that is just say it. I think it's important to validate where it's coming from and also to say, this is what we have found doesn't work, and this is why.
Right.
Does that make sense? What you're saying, I know exactly how you got there. I know exactly what you're attempting to do. So for instance, back to my realization that when I was fixing things for people and giving people advice and all this kind of stuff, the message I'm sending is, I don't believe that you're capable
Right.
of managing your own life. That had to be somehow, somewhere over the course of my life, had to be reflected to me somehow. And I don't actually remember that. I remember the moment that I realized it. I'm not sure that I remember necessarily who said it to me. It probably was a client, honestly. Just probably a teenage client because they tell you all the things. Like, oh, geez, I'm sorry, didn't mean to do that. But it's those moments where somebody's courageous enough to say, I know that you are trying to help right now. This is the message that that's actually sending
Right. Because
and
what is
help.
said and what is heard can be two different things.
Right. And for me, just I do a lot of supervision as well, so I'm having to teach this a lot. And
Mm.
for me, one of the most powerful tools that I can use is share my own failings. Like if I can share my own the times where I just completely stepped in it and screwed it up like that, all of a sudden the person that I'm sharing it with, that I'm trying to call on it, right? They're it takes the winds out of they're not at a place where they feel like they have to defend anything because I've just normalized it. It's part of learning.
Absolutely.
You're gonna,
Because
you're gonna cause harm,
we're
especially at the
all
beginning.
we're all human, right? We all make
Yeah,
mistakes.
yeah,
Hopefully we don't
yeah.
learn by them, but we
Uh-huh.
don't make them
Yep.
all of the time.
Exactly. Exactly. So I would say that. I would say you coupled, saying exactly what you saw and how why you think it's damaging and validate where it's coming from, that you think it's coming from a good place. Because that's what I've experienced. Even the most egregious things, I have to remind myself sometimes that this is coming from a helper. So most often than not, unless there's a significant like sociopathic mental health condition, because there are those, but it's like less than 1% of the population, um, most people are genuinely coming from a good place.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So anything else on engagement skills, how to interact, approach
I don't think so. I
difficult
mean,
conversations?
the more I can encourage people, it's this will be, you will feel like an imposter.
Oh,
You
I
will
have imposter syndrome.
totally.
Too many of my friends.
Oh my gosh. Mine lasted, I think, for like 7 years. I was like, why am I even in this job? I should just quit. What's going on? It's normal. It's gonna feel awkward. Just keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more natural these things will feel. Open-ended questions, being really, really curious, and empathy and validation as much as you can. The one thing I would visit a little bit about is validation because people get it confused.
Hmm,
People think that if I'm validating, I'm agreeing with what they're saying,
right.
which is not true
No, this
at
is
all. Somebody can say, I want to freaking kill my mom. And you can say, I understand that you're really frustrated right now. You have validated what they're feeling, validated their frustration. You've not in a million years said, I totally think you should go kill your mom. Does that make sense?
very much so.
Very
Absolutely.
different. One is validating, one is empathy and seeing where somebody's coming from emotionally and has nothing to do with agreeing with what the person's doing.
I think that's a great lesson, not only in this context, but in
Yeah.
the context too. But before we totally squirrel,
Yep.
the other thing I was thinking with this is, there's going to be people watching this that are not only wanting to approach and come alongside others, but there's going to be those who are suffering themselves, who've got, those kind of things. And obviously, as I've been listening, I'm thinking, yeah, that's exactly what I've needed over the time. Somebody to come
Right.
alongside and validate and hear and see me and stuff like that. So, is there
Mhm.
anything that we would say to anybody who's watching who's going through some sort of mental health condition or situation when it comes to, when people approach you in this way?
Yeah, I think, oh man, it's such a it can be so scary. It can be so scary, right? Especially when you're in the thick of it. And when you're in the thick of it, it can be almost impossible to realize that somebody does in fact see you
Mm.
and does in fact want to help in some way. And the best thing I can tell them is even if they don't do it exactly right, don't don't be shy about teaching them how to do it.
Hmm.
It's okay to say, I do want support. That's not that doesn't feel supportive. This does. And they may, even if they say something along the lines of, I don't know what I need right now. I don't know what I need right now. That's okay. Just be in the space. Even if you're just saying, can you just sit with me here for a little bit? That's okay. Because not a single no, the other thing that I would encourage people is there's not a single human alive that deals with this stuff or goes through it alone. Even if they tell you that they have, over the course of their lives, they have had multiple people who've helped them along the way.
Mm,
Not a single person.
totally.
It's not a matter of weakness, it's not a matter of strength. The strongest bridge, given the biggest hurricane, is going to buckle at some point.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, and the other thing we wanted to cover in this episode is boundaries, which I don't know if you were reading my mind this weekend, but
Totally.
something I've
Mhm.
actually been working on with my therapist recently.
It's in the water, I'm telling you.
I've even been given some homework. So, if any of you have experienced me setting a boundary with you, it's out of love and concern, and
And we should say, congrats, good job on the boundary.
there you go.
Good job, Richard.
Sometimes that can be as simple as, sometimes which foods to eat or not eat.
Uh-huh.
It can be how I communicate with somebody. It can be, maybe I turn my phone off more than I leave it on, or maybe I go home half an hour earlier than usual. So some
Absolutely.
simple maybe boundaries, but just that whole setting of boundaries and that kind of thing. But in this context, here are some questions. Is there a process or model of steps, rules again, right? Right.
Yes.
To follow when beginning to enter into a relationship of support for someone suffering with a mental health condition?
I love this question. I love this question, and there was a lot of them like it, which is why I think like one of our entire episodes is going to be around like helping the caregiver, helping the person caring, because it really has to start with boundaries. Yes, there is. Short answer is yes, there's a model. I can kind of walk you through what a normal intake without kind of the legal stuff because you wouldn't necessarily have the legal stuff. But here's what I would ask you to do. In the same way, I would ask you to sit down, and I really mean sit down and go through and ask yourself, what does support look like for me when I'm really struggling? I would also ask you to sit down and say, okay, what are my boundaries? In other words, when am I available and when am I not available?
Mm,
And here's the thing to be really careful about. It is much easier to start with strict boundaries and loosen them than it is to start with really loose and tighten them up.
yeah, yeah,
That's
sure.
yeah, I mean most of us who really struggle with boundaries, that's really what we're struggling with is that we've started with these really loose kinds of things and then things became really overwhelming because I've got it coming from 1,000 different places and now it's unmanageable and now I'm having to do this thing that feels uncharacteristic of me
Mm,
in order to survive it.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Because boundaries are not uncaring, right? They actually are caring.
They're the most loving thing that we can do.
Yeah.
Really, what we're doing is we're teaching somebody this is how to treat me. This is how I will treat you so that this relationship can be safe.
Mm,
That's it. If you think about the people in your life, your longest term friends, families that you have really close relationships with, there is no intimacy, there is no closeness without some sort of conflict and some sort of boundaries. I think of it like sandpaper. Like we sort of rub up against each other and that's how we smooth each other out.
iron sharpens iron, right? Sandpaper smooths each other out. There you go.
Now we're all soft and squishy with each other. It's great. So the way that we do it intake is okay, here's what this looks like. This is what this relationship is going to look like. This is when I'm available and
Mhm.
how I'm available. Can you call me on my phone? Can you text me? Am I okay with that? If you call me on my phone, am I going to answer all the time? Am I probably not going to answer and I'll call you back when I can? I literally tell people, I tell clients all the time, you can call me at any time or ask me to call you. If I don't call you back right away, I either because I'm gone a lot and oftentimes because of what me and my family like to go do, we're oftentimes like in the mountains or someplace where we don't have any cell service. So I tell them that, I'm gone. If I don't get back to you right away, it's because I'm looking for a place where I can do so confidentially and make sure that I can really focus on you. But I don't expect a call within like 72 hours. Sometimes, again, it's easier to keep it really tight and to loosen it than the opposite. Sometimes I can call them back within 10 minutes, but most often than not, it's going to be more like 72 hours. And I need them to know that, right? So just think about those kinds of things like how and when am I going to be available to you? And then what can you expect from me? When, how, and where will meetings take place? Am I going to go have meetings with you in a coffee shop somewhere? Is it going to always be in my office? Can we walk around some of the trails and have what can they expect?
Mm.
The ones that I think people get really hung up on, and understandably so, is you can terminate our relationship at any time, and I won't hold that against you, but also I may terminate my relationship with you.
Mm.
And here's why.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I don't know in your Stevens ministry if this is written out in policy or something, but what are some of the reasons you might terminate a helping relationship with a person?
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about Stephen Ministry, we definitely have those boundaries because Stephen Minister meets with one-on-one with a member of the same gender once a week for about an hour.
Hmm.
So that is set from that's the expectation. Now, are there times when you can't meet? Are there times where things get to a point where you need to meet twice a week for a little while? Absolutely. Like you say, you have it tight and you loosen it a little bit, but there are
Yep.
boundaries. Also, what Stephen ministers do and don't do, for
Yeah.
example. They're there to listen.
Hmm.
They're not there to do the shopping
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
because it's particular, right? And I'm imagining that in the setting of the groups that we're trying to look
Yes.
for, it will be similar. Those groups will meet probably once a week for about 8 weeks because they're going to run along the lines, at least to begin with, of the discipleship groups that do
Right.
that same sort of thing. And again, there'll be confidentiality, there'll be all of those elements, but it's good to have those expectations and those boundaries at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. Because what happens if you have somebody who comes into group who's all of a sudden abusive to other group members or to
Right.
you,
Yeah.
or they are using group and then leave, and you're finding out that they are gossiping around the community about things that happened during that group.
Yeah.
So that's where those boundaries at that intake level at the beginning, those first meetings become really important to say, hey, these are the rules that we follow. This is why it's really important. Everybody has to feel safe to be here. If you're abusive, if you're doing these kinds of things,
Totally.
also you can expect that from me, that if
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
abusive or if I that here are the repercussions that you can have. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And indeed for Stephen Ministry, there is a whole closure process when it's felt that the identified need for care has been addressed, not fixed,
Yeah,
not cured.
things have shifted.
Things have shifted, you're in a different space, then that relationship comes to a natural close,
Mhm.
and that's a positive thing.
It's a great thing. I know the number of times that I'm working on graduating somebody because we met the goals that you were after, and they're like, I can't, what? I can't. I'm like, this is what we've been working on for months now. This
Right,
is a
you've got
good
those
thing.
tools in your toolbox, you know how to use them.
You are using them.
Now that doesn't mean, a year down the road and you need to,
Right.
have a check-in or a top up or whatever, and that kind
Right.
of thing. So yeah, it's
Exactly.
those kind of
And I think the other one that people get stuck on a lot is when am I going to break confidentiality?
right.
Right. And that's a really tricky one. And I think the most powerful tool that you have is explaining at the beginning when you're going to break confidentiality. Now, in my field, it is if you tell me you are going to, not I'm thinking about, but I'm going to hurt myself, kill myself, or somebody else.
Right.
Child abuse, neglect. But for us, it's because we are mandatory reporters, so we have a little bit of cush.
Yeah,
Yeah, and some people do. Some people don't have that cush, right? They don't have that to fall back on. That's where I think just as a program, having some sort of policy where that is in place gives somebody something to fall back on because that can be a really hard conversation to have.
definitely. And we again, I'm imagining we're going to have that in place along the
Good.
lines that we do with Stephen Ministry, which is very clearly explained at the beginning. And we call it, rather than breaking, we call it expanding the
Hmm.
confidentiality. Certainly those items that you mentioned, absolutely. With mandatory reporters, if you're seriously talking about hurting yourself or someone else is hurting you, yeah, we can't keep that. But there's also times where we need to talk to, for example, a Stephen minister needs to talk to one of the Stephen leaders, or needs to talk to me as the pastor and the
Sure.
chorus coordinator, or whatever it might be, about that kind of thing. And I'm imagining the same thing will happen with the group situation as well. If those kind of things come up, first step is to, well, obviously, as I say, hurting someone. But if there's other things, it's like, oh, that's a little concerning. Need to
Right.
talk to the pastor or whoever,
Right.
and then and take
Exactly.
steps accordingly. And again, done out of love, right? I mean, done because we're there to protect as well.
We're there to keep you and the community safe as well. And sometimes I think, you know, going back to the wanting to help and fix things, and every helper I've ever known, we get into this field because we want to make people feel better.
Mm,
And there's this moment, oh, and it's kind of a painful moment, but there's this moment that we realize sometimes in order to get there, what we have to do makes somebody feel worse
mm,
at the beginning, right? And that's or or they're gonna hate me forever. I'm gonna be that person in their life that's like, you did XYZ to me. And I have to just be okay with that, knowing that my ultimate goal is to keep you and your family safe. And
right.
though that's really what those instances are about. Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And but explaining that all at the beginning so that somebody's aware, I think is really, even if it's just, if it's, hey, also, I staff things that happen in group and things like that with my pastor and with some other people that run the group so that I can do a good job and make sure that I'm doing things better. I just want to make sure that you know that it's for my educational purposes. We don't talk about details. They won't know who you are aside from these times when I have to break confidentiality. And then when we do, saying something along the lines of, do you remember when we talked about confidentiality? We've hit one of those moments right now when you said XYZ, this is something that I have to report. And then for me, what I've typically done is say, so I have to report it. How do you want to go about that? Do you want to do that with me? Do you want me to do it on my own? How there's a little bit of leeway. There's not a lot, but there's a little bit of leeway in how they can, how in giving them a choice. And if you can offer any kind of choice, do you want to walk into Pastor Richard's office with me and talk about it together? Do you want me to just do that on my own? Those kinds of things. But I do, by the end of today, have to report this.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I love that. As hard as it is that we're there, and sometimes we're not going to be the person that's liked for what we
Yep.
do, but hopefully down the road it's for the person's benefit, right? And it's going to be a
Yep.
help in the longer term.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we kind of covered this a little bit, but is there a good time to help someone with a mental health condition to find a counselor, professional help? Do you think we've covered that, or is this
Yeah,
getting
yes,
out?
and the thing that I look for, um, you know, one of the things that we do when I'm supervising other therapists, we have to distinguish very carefully between being a clinical supervisor and being a therapist,
Hmm.
and not putting on that counselor hat. One of the ways that I teach that, like when to know to have a conversation with somebody and say, I really think the issue that you're dealing with is going above and beyond supervision. I think it's time to get your own counselor. I look at sort of breadth and depth. So there's a difference between when somebody comes and is talking to me about, like, yeah, I've experienced trauma and this is what's going on, and versus every single time that we talk, the bulk of what we're talking about is that the person is getting really stuck in it, having a very hard time, no matter what we try or work on, moving past those kinds of things. When those things are coming up and we're consistently coming up and it's a repetitive pattern, it might be an indication to you that it's the level of support that they're being given right now is not quite what they need.
Hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Or if their behavior is so erratic that it's causing damage to their life or their relationships,
Mm.
even without your support. I think those are probably two of the biggest things I would look at.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because it can be hard when you're supporting, right? To figure out like what, what I think yeah, all of this sort of wraps in on, of itself, it can be hard to think like how am I going to support this person? How am I going to help them get in to see a counselor? When am I going to know not to do that, when not to do that? It all it all it all relates to itself.
Absolutely. And you know, the other piece of the puzzle is getting into a counselor when that time comes as well, because
Yes.
it seemingly has got more and more difficult over perhaps dare I use the COVID word since COVID?
The year that shall not be named.
Yeah.
It's true. And that's one thing that I would encourage folks on as well is that has slowed down a bit. And so it's so funny what happens in the community. So the mental health will go through this period of time where it's really busy, you can't get into one.
Mm,
And then it slows down, people
right,
quit calling. And then it slows down, but nobody knows that yet
right,
because they've quit calling. So, if you need help or if you're looking, call because those wait lists have gotten they're a lot more improved.
right. Plus, if you're not on a wait list, you're not moving up a wait list,
You're
right?
not moving. Yes,
That's right.
exactly.
Absolutely. Well, that's
Yeah.
great. Well, according to my list, we covered everything on the
Good. Good. Phew. In a perfect
maybe
amount
not in the order we thought, but that's
Oh,
okay.
no. Well, hey, the ADD person in me is very happy with the bounce around. I just bounce around. It's fine. God help anybody who's trying to follow it, Richard.
This is why they can go and rewatch it, pause it, rewind
And
it.
ask us questions. I mean,
Absolutely.
seriously, yeah, it's just going to help more of these as we go forward. And yeah,
Definitely. Well, anything else for the good of the order?
I think that that's it. Could just tread forward and be brave. Just ask all the big stuff and then be curious and as empathetic as you can.
Wonderful. Yeah, I
Thanks for
also
doing
have
the
a
work you're
really
doing.
great resource on empathy from our Stephen Ministry, a book on empathy and what empathy is and what empathy isn't. So if anybody would like to know that and you know me in person, come and ask me. Otherwise, I'll probably put a link down there as well.
Sweet. That's great.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
here's the end of episode 1. We'll be back in episode 2 and look forward to seeing you then.
Great. Thanks, you guys. Bye.